Just a little quick background on the trimming policy and how we got to where we're at today. The City of Moscow, within Title V, Chapter 8, has had regulations on the trimming of vegetation. Our vegetation trimming is in line with what is sort of an industry standard around the state for sure and many areas of the country as far as our clearances that are required. The clearances that we require include clearance over the street right-of-way, also over sidewalks, and within site triangles on corners. It's pretty intuitive for the most part why those things are needed. With over the street way, obviously that's intended to be a travel way. We have vehicles that are taller, moving vehicles, different service trucks, Vista utility trucks, in addition to city street sweepers performing services on these streets. And so it's important that we keep that accessible. We just finished talking about our transportation plan. The sidewalks, having the sidewalks clear and an 8-foot clearance on the sidewalk. I think most of us have probably walked in an area where we get pushed out into the street from what otherwise would be a perfectly usable sidewalk because it's been overgrown by vegetation. The site triangles is something that we've talked about quite a bit, very important as we all pull up to that corner and are trying to safely enter the roadway. It's really important that we have those site triangles trimmed and clear so that you can see and pull out safely here in the community. All of this is balanced with Moscow being a city that's very tree friendly. We love our trees. We're an arbor city, and it's something that the city takes a lot of pride in, and a lot of residents take a lot of pride in their landscaping at their homes. And so since this has been a subject where there is potential conflict because it's something that there's a safety need and an operational need for it to happen, there's also people who are very invested in their landscaping. And so we wanted to formalize our policy and bring it to the council. On a lot of these things where there is the potential for conflict, we like to be able to bring that before you and have the discussion to make sure that our operations are in line with the desires of the council. So we initially brought this forward in January of this year on the 27th to the Public Works Finance Committee, and it was subsequently taken back with some updates based on recommendations from the Public Works Finance Committee on the 25th and most recently on the 25th of August and most recently on the 22nd of September. I'm going to run through just a few quick items in talking about our tree trimming. The way that we've operationally done it for the past, this will be our 4th years. We have the city divided into 4 areas that you see there on the map on the screen. On a rotation, we do 1 area each year. So the way that we've got the program proposed before you is that trimming would occur in one of these 4 areas per year. Notifications will go out in the fall to the area that is designated for trimming the subsequent spring. That's the first notification that goes out. In the spring, and that notification, what it basically informs the homeowner of the policy, informs them of what their responsibilities are as a homeowner, and encourages them to have their trees trimmed. Lets them know that we'll be coming to do compliance inspections in the spring in the area, and encourages them to have their trees trimmed. It provides contact information so that they can call and ask us any questions. We often arrange meetings at people's properties to review what needs to happen at their specific property if they have questions. We also provide numbers and contacts for certified arborists within the city, so that certified tree trimming services, so that they can know who to get a hold of to have their trees trimmed.
And that's done with a door hanger?
That's done with a door hanger. The initial notification is done with a door hanger. In the spring, when we go out to start trimming, we provide at least a 2-week notice prior to coming through to inspect the area, which is once again done with a door hanger. The initial door hanger goes to all properties. I should emphasize, in the fall it goes to all properties. All properties are notified. When we go back out in the spring, they'll place a door hanger on properties where there is some trimming that would occur if the homeowner doesn't have it taken care of by the time we get there. That door hanger is hung at least 2 weeks before the crews are on site performing the inspections and the compliance trimming. At that point, the crews go out and they just go street by street and cover the area. And what's proposed in the policy is that as the crews go along, if there's minor trimming that needs to take place, they will conduct that trimming. You know, a lot of times it's, well, there's this branch here, or this one's a little low, or, you know, this one's in the site triangle, they might have missed it, and so we perform the minor trimming as we go around. This is one of the proposed differences that we have in the program. Previously, we just did all the trimming, and so it wasn't separated out as minor trimming. We would go through and perform any trimming needed to bring the property into compliance.
John, any question?
Just in the end result of this process that you're using is for safety. It is not for how good the lawn looks or how good the tree looks or anything like that. This is strictly for safety, and if the house owner wants to go for how it looks, that is essentially up to them. And then if your people have given them essentially 6 months to rectify a situation before we go back in.
That's correct. Yeah, John, our crews are trained. They're certified by our city arborist. And so we try and get them as trained as possible to go out and make proper cuts, but tree trimming is not these guys' job 365 days of the year. It's a streets crew. They're streets employees. We do want to do an adequate job, and we definitely don't want to damage people's vegetation. But yeah, our goal is to have it compliant so that operationally and for safety reasons it functions the way it's intended to function. When it was reviewed by the Public Works Finance Committee, there was a request made for us to look at the costs of the program and if it was appropriate to insert some sort of reimbursement to the city for work that was being performed on properties. And so the proposal that we've come back with is that at that notification process, as the street crews go out and perform this compliance inspection, as I indicated, we would perform minor trimming on properties that weren't compliant with the ordinance. But properties that were estimated at that time to take more than an hour of trimming would then be passed along into an enforcement process where they would then receive a certified mailing as a notification and be given the days required by the law and by the ordinance to come into compliance. And so that's the primary difference in the proposal that we have now versus how the program has operated for these first 4 years.
I think there might be a question on that. Do you have?
I heard certified mailing. I was wondering, is that the first communication that the city has with the landowner that, aside from just notice of, hey, this is the year that your area is being looked at, is the first time that a landowner hears that their tree might need to be trimmed in the form of a certified letter from the city?
There's the initial door hanging, Tom, that goes to everybody that you indicated,
right,
which goes out in the fall. In the spring, there's a subsequent door hanging that goes on any property that is going to need trimming at that point. And so there are two door hangers that are given prior to any certified mailing going out.
Okay.
Walter?
And how long do they have after the certified mailing before the city does it and they get the bill?
There's a 10-day period within the ordinance. If you look under the criteria for trimming reimbursement section, for locations requiring more than an hour of trimming, the owner of the adjacent property will be notified of the violation and given 10 days to bring said property into compliance with the city code.
Okay.
I want to just run through a few of these. It had been indicated, you know, this is an example of a door hanger that we've used before. These would be modified with the passage of this policy to provide some different emphasis. But that's just to give you an example of the door hanger that's gone out. We provide the illustration so that people can better understand what it is that we're looking for. This is on the reverse side of that same door hanger. There's a separate door hanger for sight triangles. This is where we put those on corner lots where they might have a problem, so they understand the difference between a sight triangle and just normal right-of-way trimming and what the extra requirements are for the sight triangle. This helps a lot because a lot of times there's questions about how you measure a sight triangle. We'll often get calls and people are kind of in a panic because they think that a lot of their vegetation is in the sight triangle, and you can show them the curb extension and how it's measured. This is from the EPA NPDES best practices page. It's not just so that vehicles don't get hit by branches. Our sweeping program is really important for maintaining the quality of our stormwater runoff. Keeping our curb and gutter, their stormwater facilities, and the catch basin grates. You'll see, they often get plugged with things, and our street sweeper's ability to sweep the curb and gutter effectively is really important for that. These are just a few examples. You can see how the debris gathers along the edges there, and when we get a compounding problem that we have with this is when we have vegetation that plugs up the curb and gutter, leaves and other debris will then block the curb and gutter, and it doesn't perform its intended purpose, and the water gets pushed out into the street, and the water is actually really hard, especially on asphalt, when it gets pushed out in the street. You can see in this picture where the water's been coming down, and then you can see all the small stones that have been pushed out into the street where the water flows out into the street and then ends up flowing and sitting on the crack between the asphalt and the concrete of the curb and gutter, and it can be pretty problematic for us. This is an example of an area where we had just that. The shrubs that you see to the right of the photograph overhung the curb and gutter for quite a while and backed up, and it actually just rotted about a foot section of asphalt out away from the curb, and we ended up having to go back in and patch the area once the shrubs were trimmed back. Another problem we'll have is it narrows the travel lane, obviously. This is an example where we have 6 feet out from the curb and gutter we have shrubs, and so then we have a parked car. There's parking allowed here, and so you end up with a parked car out in the travel lane because they're not able to get any closer, and then it gets further exacerbated when there's snow that's built up there, and it just continues to narrow our travel areas. I'm going to flip through a few of these.
The thought occurred to me, one of the things, we all like to plant bushes and stuff, and over years the damn things grow, and they take over everything, and so it's just a natural thing to have happen, and that's what we're talking about, really.
Exactly, and that's one of the things that I want to mention. I know that it's often brought up, hey, you guys are coming out and you're hacking up these trees and you're hacking up these shrubs. That's really not our goal. We don't want to do that. It's not something our guys want to be out there doing or having to make something not look aesthetically pleasing. They're not getting joy out of doing that, but it's just, Mr. Mayor, as you said, over the years when something grows out so far, inevitably when we do go to cut it back, here's an example here. That was several feet out into the travelway. And so there's just not a pretty way to cut that back, because had it been maintained year after year, the greenery's on the front edge, and it's not a problem.
Good news, Tyler, there's no way you can possibly kill those things, because I've cut them back and shot them back for years. You can't kill them. The damn things just keep going.
They're pretty robust.
Yeah.
So here's an example. Yeah, this is a year later of one that we trimmed back, and it's obviously there's not greenery on the exposed edge when we go through and trim, but they do typically come back and grow back, and the guys are really trying to be careful and make it look as aesthetically pleasing as possible. But as was mentioned, we don't have a lot of time, and we're already committing a pretty large amount of time and city resources to doing this, and so the guys are trying to get through in an efficient way. This is just an example of some of the damage that can occur. You see the big gouge on our sweeper there. As many of the council knows, as they looked through the budget last year, we just purchased a new sweeper to the tune of almost $250,000, and this is equipment that we can't just go replacing all the time, that we count on to have working and running. And so it's important for a lot of different reasons.
Tom had a question here first. And I'll go
Are we intending to have the same requirements for the 8-foot height and so forth over sidewalk apply to the city, say, for example, with the Paradise Path?
Yeah, I believe that would apply to any walkway. That might be,
because I know that we've got a few sections where that probably needs to be caught up with, if that's the case. And if we do, would we have to wait for the rotational thing, or can we just kind of go through and do the entire pathway?
The way that the program's set up we're doing the rotational portion in the areas, and then as we get complaints about an area, it gets turned over just directly to ordinance enforcement. So if it's not a direct safety issue, like if it's blocking a stop sign, then we'll go out and make it safe. We'll go out and trim it. But if otherwise, we just pass it along if it's in an off year for that area to ordinance enforcement for them to look at.
If I may.
Walter? Okay,
If I could, just to
Yeah,
follow up
please.
on your question.
Thanks.
This particular policy and ordinance pertains to the street rights-of-way, so streets and alleys, as administered through the Street Department and Public Works. For pathways, that's a parks facility, and so that's something that they would do as part of their normal maintenance of the pathway system, the trail system. So if there are areas like that you've noted that have problems, it's something we should just go ahead and refer to the parks folks, and they can take a look at it.
Well,
as it
if
comes
we
up.
still have the same edge and the 8-foot overhang,
Yeah, as far as
then
the-
it would be nice to see that applied to the pathway too, and sweeping and whatever, those same things I think would help with the decay of the asphalt and the.
That's good. Dwight's here tonight, so he's hearing this, and so that's all good. Now, Walter had a question here.
Tyler, can you go back to your current door hanger that you had on your slide?
Certainly.
I think it was maybe your first slide of this series.
There you go.
Yeah, right there. Trimming of these trees and shrubs in the public right-of-way is a requirement of the property owners by ordinance. We're not adding that. We're not changing it. We are speaking to the policy of how the city's going to go through town once every 4 years and effectively do it for them. I believe you told us at Public Works Finance you're talking about $25,000 per year.
That's correct. We've just finished the
So
fourth of four
it's
areas.
it's not an unbelievable amount of money, but it ain't cheap. I would like to see your new door hanger have a different approach to it, other than if you wish to perform the trimming yourself or hire your own contractor, please have it done, or we're going to do it. I would prefer more emphasis on you need to get this done, and then we're coming through, if I can draw that shade of difference between the wording I see there and what I would feel we probably should lean toward.
Yeah, based on our discussions with Public Works Finance, that's something that we plan on doing, is revising these to place the emphasis on having it done, and that the city coming through isn't coming through trimming, we're coming through to do a compliance inspection.